Okay, boys and girls, it is time for another story of The Boy with the Bow. So make sure you're in a good spot to hear well. And today we're going to learn through this story about diligence. And diligence is working hard at doing hard things. Can you say it with me? Diligence is working hard at doing hard things. So, we are going to begin our story of the boy with the bow. As you'll remember, the boy with the bow left for his treehouse, but he was being followed by a man in a cape who possibly could have been Sir Liechtenstein. Now, the boy with the bow got back to his treehouse, and he had a very, very busy 2 weeks ahead of him. The boy with the bow had only 2 weeks to get ready for this very, very difficult shooting competition against Sir Liechtenstein, and he needed to practice, and he needed to practice as much as he could for as long as he could. And that presented a problem for him because he couldn't hunt. And so how could he eat? He spent a couple of days trying to gather trying to kill as many animals as he could so that he could have some meat stored up, but that wasn't working for him very well. And so he decided that he just needed to be diligent, to work hard at doing hard things, and just worry about eating when he could squeeze in a little bit of time to eat. And so he would spend hours and hours and hours practicing with his bow. He would spend the first 2 hours of his day practicing without a bow and arrow because a bow is really hard to pull back. And so he would practice without an arrow. He would just practice his breathing and letting go. He would make sure that his arms were steady, that he wasn't shaky. He would work on pretending of thinking about the arrow flying through the air and hitting the middle of the target. And he would do that for the first 2 hours of his day. As the weeks went on, actually, Vivian would come by from the castle and bring him lunch because he didn't have time to go try to catch his own food, to go get his own food. And so Vivian would every day around lunchtime, she would come from the castle with scraps of breakfast that they didn't eat, or some eggs that she got from the chickens that were around the castle, or some leftovers from dinner that were just going to be thrown away. She would take those and she would sneak away from the castle and over to the boy with the bow's treehouse, and they would have lunch together. And that was the boy with the bow's favorite part of the day, was when they got to have lunch together and they would talk, and she would tell him about her day and how all of the crazy things that were happening at the castle, and all of the good food that they were eating, and all of the fun things that she was able to do. And the boy with the bow would tell her about his goals for hitting the next target that he wanted to get, or all of the different things that he was trying to do to get better at shooting his bow and arrows. And after lunch, this was the hardest part of the day for the boy with the bow, because he would practice with a real bow and real arrows, and he would spend sometimes 4 hours shooting at a target, just one shot after another, after another, after another. And this would get really, really tiring for the boy with the bow. It had been a week and a half, and the boy with the bow was feeling like he wasn't ready. And he sat down at lunch with Vivian one day and he said to Vivian, "I just do not think that I'm ready. I don't know that I can do this." And Vivian asked the boy with the bow, the princess asked the boy with the bow, she said, "What do you think you could do that would make you feel like you're ready?" And the boy with the bow thought, and he said, if I could hit a watermelon from 100 yards out. If I could do that well and do that like a couple of times in a row, then I think I would be ready. And Vivian looked at the boy with the bow and she said, you know what? I think that's what you need to do. And so the boy with the bow, he decided, you know what? I'm going to do that. And he spent 4 hours every night trying and getting closer to hitting this watermelon that was way, way out in the woods. And I actually have a picture for you today that maybe something that the woods might have looked like for the boy with the bow. So he actually would have to stand way back here, and he would have to aim 100 yards out, and he'd have to miss trees. So it wasn't just hard because it was a long shot, but he had to make sure that he just made a perfect shot through the trees. And so the boy with the bow, he had to make sure he was a very, very good shot. And you know what? It took a lot of diligence. Do you remember what diligence is? Diligence is working hard at doing hard things. I also have another picture here with me. This is something that maybe the boy with the boy's bow and arrows maybe looked like. Pretty cool, huh? Not super fancy, not super shiny, but doesn't that look like a nice, good, sturdy bow and arrows that can fly straight? So the boy with the bow was taking this bow and arrows. He was going out into his woods, and he was getting very frustrated because he could not hit the watermelon. But do you know what? One day, he went out into the woods, and he felt like today was the day. There was a certain calm in the air. There wasn't any wind. The birds were chirping very nicely, and everything was still. And the boy with the bow took a deep breath. He grabbed his bow and his arrows, and he pulled the arrow back. And he let the arrow fly. And it sailed through the air. Through the air it sailed. And it hit right under the watermelon. And the boy with the bow, he took his bow and he threw it down and he hung his head and he put his hand in his face in his hands and he said, I'm never gonna beat Sir Lichtenstein. But Vivian, who was watching, she said, boy with the bow, you need to work on being diligent. And she said, do you know what diligence is? And the boy with the bow said, oh, I don't know what diligence is. She said, diligence is working hard at doing hard things. You need to work hard. And the boy with the bow said, you know what? You're right. I need to do that. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to make a pact with myself. I'm going to work hard. I am not going to go to bed until I can hit this watermelon with my bow and arrows. And that was quite the decision for the boy with the bow. He liked to sleep. He would get very tired after he was working very hard. And he decided that that's what he was going to do. Today, he was going to do that. He had 6 hours to get all of his bows and arrows ready, to get shooting as much as he could so that he could hit the watermelon. Not just once, but twice. There were times during those 6 hours that the boy with the bow hit the watermelon once, but his second arrow would always miss, and this frustrated the boy with the bow. But he had to be diligent. This was hard for him, and to do something that's hard, you have to work hard. And so he wanted to be diligent. He wanted to work hard at doing hard things. It was 2 days before the competition. The boy with the bow had not hit the watermelon yet. He had spent 4 hours one day. He had spent 6 hours one day. He had spent even 8 hours shooting his bow and arrows. He had to take a whole day off because he had hurt his hand just a little bit and he did not want to cut it. But today was the last day he felt like he could practice and practice as hard as he could. He got up early in the morning and he shot and he shot. Vivian brought lunch and he said, you know what? I think I'm okay. I don't need to eat lunch. I need to keep shooting. He shot and he shot, sometimes hitting a watermelon, sometimes missing the second shot. Finally, the sun was just peeking under the trees. It was about to go down. And the boy with the bow had hit the watermelon once, but he needed to hit it twice. Vivian was watching from afar, and she was trying not to distract him and trying to stay hidden. And the boy with the bow drew his bow back, and he let the arrow fly, and it sailed. And do you know what happened? The boy with the bow hit the watermelon. The arrow sailed right into the watermelon. You know what? It didn't just stick in the watermelon. It went right through the watermelon. The watermelon split in half. And the boy with the bow yelled, "Yes, I've done it. I did it." And Vivian came running, and they gave each other a high five. And they were so happy. The boy with the bow could shoot a watermelon twice in a row from 100 yards away in a forest. There was no way that Sir Liechtenstein was going to beat the boy with the bow. There was no way. And the boy with the bow thought, if Sir Liechtenstein was watching me right now, he would be scared. The boy with the bow said goodnight to Vivian, and he began to climb up into his treehouse, excited about the next day, excited about the competition. But do you know what? The boy with the bow wasn't alone. Someone had been watching him practice the entire time. And that someone was, as he had guessed, very, very worried that he was going to lose the competition. That someone was Sir Liechtenstein. As the boy with the bow was climbing up into his treehouse, he felt a hand across his back. And then that hand grabbed onto his cloak and flung him back off the tree. And he was rolling around with this someone. He didn't know who it was. And then the someone spoke, and he said, "I know who you are, boy with the bow. You are not going to get away." And the boy with the bow said, "Oh yeah? Try to stop me." And he gave the man in the black coat a kick on the shins. And the man went, "Ah, ow!" And his hood came off. And the boy with the bow saw who it was. It was Sir Liechtenstein. Sir Liechtenstein looked at him with angry eyes, and he took his fist and he punched the boy with the bow right in the stomach. Oh! He doubled over and he fell to the ground. The next thing the boy with the bow remembered was the bark of his treehouse against his back, and he felt ropes crawling across his arms, and then he felt the ropes tightly drawn across his chest. He heard walking behind him, and he heard the voice of Sir Liechtenstein. Sir Liechtenstein said, "You know, I was going to kill you, but I don't think I have to." Sir Liechtenstein told the boy with the bow, "I'm going to make sure you can never, ever get to the competition." The boy with the bow said, "You know I'm going to get out of these ropes, and I'm going to get to the competition." Sir Liechtenstein replied, "If you do, I will kill you." The boy with the bow looked up into the starry night sky as he heard Sir Liechtenstein walk away, crunching softly until he was gone. There was nothing but night, and the boy with the bow was alone. He thought about calling for someone, but then he knew Sir Liechtenstein would hear and come back, so he was quiet. He was stuck. He did not know how he would get to the competition the next day. And that is where our story of the boy with the bow ends. I hope you enjoyed the story. I hope you're excited about next week. What will happen to the boy with the bow? Will he be able to get out of his ropes? Will he be able to help the princess? Will he be able to help save the princess? We will have to see. We will have to see how good of a rope tire Sir Liechtenstein was. Today we talked about diligence. Can everyone tell me what diligence is? I want to hear you. Diligence is... Yes, diligence, well, maybe yes, maybe you got it right. Diligence is working hard at doing hard things. Diligence is a good thing. Maybe you can think of ways that you've been diligent. Or maybe you can think of ways that your parents have been diligent, that they've worked hard at doing hard things. Many of you have dads who go away to work every day. And you know that's not easy for them to do. They work hard at doing hard things. And while all of that's good and that's something that we should want to be like, there's someone that's a very, very important that he was diligent. Even it's more important than your dad's diligence. It's more important that Jesus was diligent. Do you think it was easy for Jesus to never sin? Hebrews 14:2 tells us that Jesus resisted sin to the point of shedding his own blood. It was not easy for him. He had to work hard at doing hard things. And because he did that, when we trust in him, we know we're not perfect. We know that we're sinful, just like that object lesson that I did a couple of weeks ago. We know that we're not perfect, but Jesus' diligence is ours if we will trust in him and ask him to save us from our sins. Jesus lived a perfect life. He never sinned. Can you imagine how hard that would be? That would take a lot of diligence. I hope this helped you understand diligence a little bit more. I look forward to telling you about the boy with the bow next week. And we will see what happens to the boy with the bow. We'll see what happens to Vivian the princess. And we will see what happens to Sir Liechtenstein.